Welcome to Window Dressing's Twin Peaks mini-season, The Women of the Woods. I'm Madeline Jane Auble. Please stay tuned at the end of this episode for the trailer of Whatever Happened to Betty and Joan, a new podcast by my friend and film critic Frank Cavillo. I begin the season with an overview of the 1990 to 1991 series Twin Peaks. I am only dealing with the first season and the first half of season 2, right up to the discovery of Laura's killer. I will not be talking about the second half of season 2, the reboot in 2019, or the prequel film Fire Walk with Me. Twin Peaks is a nighttime soap, a genre that was becoming all the rage at this time. Post-Dynasty, pre-Melrose Place, David Lynch and Mark Frost created a piece of pop culture that fit into current TV fashion, while extending world building beyond the surface level of traditional television into the hearts and minds of the viewing audience. Frost came from Hill Street Blues, where he was a writer for years. His experience with procedural crime drama made it possible for Lynch's imagery to flourish through a mystery that trades the bureaucracy of procedure for intuition and dreams. In previous episodes, I have talked about Lynch's reliance on archetypal imagery and what I would call cultural iconography. These are his primary storytelling tools, and they work. People tend to become obsessed with the meaning of Lynch's work, but that misses the point. The meaning of his work is emotional, not logical. You can feel it, and then through that make meaning. I will do my best to describe my feelings as opposed to articulating arithmetic for you when I get to the individual portraits of the women of the woods. The exposition of the show is a beat well in hand by Agent Cooper's voice recordings to Diane. It takes up the mantle of Joan Bennett in Dark Shadows voiceover, and too many noirs to name here, particularly the posthumous confessions that permeate the genre. Noir is crime melodrama. It is a mystery soap opera. The only thing separating noir from soaps is a gendered understanding of what tragedy and twists of fate entail. The show's heart is a twist of fate. The death of Laura Palmer, a local blonde beauty queen aged 17, played by Cheryl Lee. Her body is found wrapped in plastic on the rocky beach of the river situated in the fictional milling town of Twin Peaks, which is 5 miles south of the Canadian border in Washington state. Although it was filmed on location in Washington, a fair amount of the wooded scenes are right here at home in the Santa Monica mountain ranges of Malibu. Laura dies on February 23rd. FBI's Special Agent Dale Cooper, played by Kyle MacLachlan, comes to town the next day, on February 24th, at 11:30 a.m. A second girl is found wandering over state lines, who went missing at the same time Laura did. Her name is Ronette Pulaski. She was Laura's schoolmate and the daughter of a local mill worker. The sawmill is owned by Josie Packard, played by Joan Chen, the widowed bride of Andrew Packard, and the secret undercover harlot of Twin Peaks. She lives with Andrew's sister, Catherine, played by Piper Laurie, who hates Josie, and Catherine's kindly fisherman husband, Pete, who seems a little too charmed by the innocent act Josie's got down pat. Pete is played by Jack Nance. Josie is dating the town's sheriff, Harry S. Truman, played by Michael Onkine. Josie embodies a 1920s vamp. She wears high necklines, slicked back short hair, and red lips. She plays sweet, but is hiding a secret. Secrets are what Laura Palmer was full of before she met her untimely end. Twin Peaks has a charming, almost Cabot Cove vibe, Jessica Fletcher's hometown in Murder, She Wrote, with a dash of the rocky-shored manner of the 1966 soap opera Dark Shadows. The place isn't so much a character as a force. It contains stories that play themselves out among the human inhabitants. Special Agent Dale Cooper is met with friendly cooperation from the local law, Sheriff Harry Truman, Deputy Andy, and Deputy Hawk. Andy and Hawk are played by Harry Goes and Michael Horse. The place bewitches Coop, as does the coffee and pie at the Lamplighter Inn outside of town and the Double R Diner in town. Norma Jennings owns the Double R. She is played by the timeless beauty Peggy Lipton, who is first up for her own episode. Peggy is married to Hank, played by Chris Mulkey, an incarcerated killer. She may still be attracted to Hank, but she is in love with Big Ed Hurley. Ed, played by Everett McGill, is in love with Peggy, but he is married to Nadine, played by Wendy Roby, a one-eyed redhead obsessed with silent drape runners and glass figurines. Shelley Johnson, played by Madchen Amick, is a local high school dropout and curly-haired queen who works at the Double R with Norma. She is married to long-haul trucker and traditional wife-beater Leo Johnson, played by Eric Doré. She may be a battered wife, but she is still a teenager, so her hot and heavy affair with local football hero and bad boy Bobby Briggs is to be expected. Bobby, played by Dana Ashbrook, was Laura Palmer's boyfriend. Laura, like Bobby, was also seeing someone on the side, James Hurley, played by James Marshall. James is the sad boy motorcycle rider with a whore for a mother and a disappeared daddy. He was in love with Laura and her best friend Donna, played by Laura Flynn Boyle. Donna is a goody two-shoes with a warm family life and all the support a growing girl could need. In other words, unrelatable and unlikable. Her saving grace is the color story of her family's home, which is outfitted with wall-to-wall rose carpeting. It's so lovely and warm that you are lulled in by the promise of the security she was born with. Security and love that only exist for her. Her daddy is Doc Hayward, the town's local doctor and a warm-hearted man who delivered nearly every baby in town, including his own child, Donna. She will cosplay a troubled bad girl as the series goes along, adding extra emphasis to her unbreakable safety net. I do not like Donna. Donna's schoolmate and fellow brunette, and believe me, hair color is where the similarities end, Audrey Horne, is a heroic figure, and for me, the main character of the show, at least the one who is left alive. She is a sultry 17-year-old with schoolgirl skirts and fire engine red high heels. She is hot, bothered, and blessed with a romantic heart. Her looks are classic old Hollywood. She is the brunette Stanwyck, the world-weary Marilyn Monroe, an icon who has yet to shed her innocence completely. Audrey is the daughter of Benjamin Horne, owner of the grandiose waterfall-adjacent Great Northern Inn. Special Agent Dale Cooper, who I will eventually refer to just as Coop, takes up residence there while he is in Twin Peaks. I am pleased to tell you that, like the Lamplighter Inn and the Double R Diner, the Great Northern also serves damn good coffee. Twin Peaks is a bit like a Sherwood forest, but with the industry of capitalism that defines this country as its centerpiece. The mill has ceased to be profitable, but businessmen like Benjamin Horne and brother Jerry Horne, played by Richard Beimer and David Patrick Kelly, are attempting to bring in other sources of income to the town, like the real estate project aptly titled Ghostwood Estates. That project would clear acres and acres of the majestic pines that contain the evil and the magic of Twin Peaks. In addition to Ghostwood and the inn, Benjamin Horne also owns One-Eyed Jack's, a bordello and gambling den just over the Canadian border. He is partnered with the establishment's resident madam, Black Rose, or Blackie for short, played by Victoria Caitlin. Blackie was the famous character that Clark Gable played, starting with the 1934 film Manhattan Melodrama, and then 2 years later in the 1936 film San Francisco. In the latter, he plays a borderline pimp and gambling kingpin turned politician in the heyday of San Francisco's Barbary Coast. Blackie's nickname, Black Rose, could also refer to her debilitating heroin addiction, although she seems to prefer China White. This addiction was forced upon her by her business partner, Benjamin Horne, who got her addicted to the stuff as a means of control. Control that Brother Jerry is also in on. She returns the gift when she is involved in forcing Audrey into her own heroin addiction as a means of keeping the girl captive in an undercover mission on Audrey's part that quickly turned to a kidnapping and blackmail scheme against Mr. Horne that involved Coop, whose palpable affection for Audrey pulled him in as the delivery person of the ransom. Audrey was interested in Coop from the get, realizing that she wanted to help him find Laura's killer, not because she liked Laura, they weren't exactly friends, as Audrey put it, but because Laura helped tutor her mentally challenged brother Johnny. She loved Laura for that, and she loves Special Agent Dale Cooper. Johnny is hot but dumb. In addition to Laura's help, he also has a psychiatrist, Dr. Jacoby. Jacoby is played by Russ Tamblyn. The doctor is a Hawaiian-obsessed weirdo who likes young girls but loves fruity drink umbrellas. He was also Laura's doctor. Audrey, knowing her daddy's ill-gotten gains and dirty dealings, finds a connection between Laura and Ronette. They both worked at Horne's department store, her daddy's store, specifically the perfume counter. The department store, which I failed to mention earlier, is one of the many businesses owned by Horne. She convinces her dad to let her help in the family business and then blackmails Emery, the department store manager, into placing her at the perfume counter. She quickly uncovers a perfume counter to bordello pipeline lined with glass unicorn trinkets. The exploitation of minors for the pleasure of Canadians and border-crossing ne'er-do-wells is big business, but who can resist the red-hot charms of Audrey Horne? She easily cons her way into a job as a hospitality girl at One-Eyed Jack's. She is done up in the Queen of Hearts garb all the girls wear, red and white frills with plenty of proper garter belts and cleavage. Her true identity as Daddy Horne's daughter is eventually found out. Then she is forced into captivity and heroin addiction by Blackie, Daddy Horne's business partner. Blackie calls in Jean Renault. He is the third Renault brother. The first two are dead. Bernard Renault was killed by Leo Johnson over drug running gone bad. Jacques Renault was shot by Deputy Andy's bullet when he was being arrested for his potential involvement in Laura's death. Andy is the bumbling Barney Fife of the town, incredibly charming but dumb. His aimless innocence was also the key to discovering the drug business when he stumbled onto a loose plywood piece revealing Leo's stash of cocaine and Circle brand boots. Jacques is finished off by Laura's daddy, Leland Palmer, while lying unconscious in his hospital bed post-gunshot wound. Audrey left a note for her special agent Cooper under his door at the Great Northern the night she went missing. But he was shot by an unknown assailant that night and visited by a giant who eventually helps him catch a killer, but fails to mention the note, which gets pushed under the bed by accident. The giant later tells Coop that he forgot something, the forgotten something being the note, which he finds the day he is pulled into the cash drop trade for Audrey arranged by Daddy Horn. He asks Coop to deliver the ransom cash in exchange for his daughter. He doesn't tell Coop the details of the kidnapping or the fact that he owns One-Eyed Jack's, where his daughter is being held. Horn sends Hank, Norma's homicidal husband, who just got paroled, to follow Coop. This is a double setup orchestrated to kill Coop, a setup built on the pre-existing blackmail scheme of Blackie and Jean. Blackie wants to own the bordello outright, and Jean wants to avenge his brother's death. But as it goes, Blackie is double-crossed by Jean, who murders her with Harry as a witness. Hank is caught by Jean. It looks like the only light he is turning towards is a bare bulb. Not only is he a criminal hated by other criminals, but he is an abusive asshole. The actor playing Hank, Chris Mulkey, also has an abusive streak. When I talk about Norma, aka Peggy Lipton, I will touch on a story where he physically abused her on set in service of a scene. When Audrey gets home, she is strung out, but alive. Coop feels responsible for the whole mess, given he was part of the revenge plot that got the poor girl drugged and held captive. Not to mention the fact that Audrey was motivated to help Special Agent Cooper because she loves him. Harry encourages Coop to think less, an oh-so-perfect response to a man attempting to take accountability instead of passing it along to the female victim. Based on a prophetic dream Coop had before his gunshot wound and Audrey's kidnapping, he was warned about a one-armed man and two people named Mike and Bob. He found this one-armed man, and upon questioning him, discovered that outside of his dream, Mike was Philip Gerard, a shoe salesman and all-around good guy who lost his arm in an accident. He did indeed know a Mike, his best friend actually, but this Mike wasn't catching anyone with his death bag, as was said in Coop's dream. He was a vet who leads police and Coop to the minor bird that left bite marks on Laura's corpse and took a chunk out of the One-Eyed Jack poker chip found at the scene of the crime. The giant that is part of the universal we that came to visit Coop when he was shot told him about a man who points without chemicals. We refers to Coop's spirit guides, angels, or otherwise difficult to classify beings that travel worlds yet are omnipresent and never present. The man who points without chemicals is the one-armed man. That man is Mike. Mike helps them flesh out Bob, whom they find out is an entity of evil that possesses the minds and spirits, but never the hearts of men. Hawk calls it the evil men do. I call it simply evil. Only people who are gifted or cursed can see Bob's true face. Bob is played by set decorator Frank Silva, who mistakenly was seen in the reflection of a mirror while filming a scene about Laura's visions. The mistake was a faded gift from Lynch's spirit guides, and Silva became the face of evil in Twin Peaks in perpetuity. Meanwhile, Donna, James, and Madeline, Laura's identical twin cousin with brown hair, are playing teenage love triangle in which James is the idiot, Donna the fool, and Madeline the victim of both. It turns out she is thrice victimized by the terror of Twin Peaks. Her last and final tormentor is Bob. She is murdered and dumped and wrapped in plastic, just like her pristine blonde counterpart. During the murder, Daddy Horn is in jail, now suspected of killing Laura as a result of Audrey's newfound information about his dirty dealings and forced affairs with not one, but many underage female sex workers, including Laura Palmer. It becomes clear that although child rapist Daddy Horn is not a murderer, or at least not Laura or Madeline's murderer, he was involved in the planned death of Catherine, sister of dead mill owner Andrew, who turns out not to be dead. That is, Andrew and Catherine survived the respective hits on their person. Andrew's murder was arranged by his wife, Josie, whose hand was forced by her child pimp and his henchmen. Catherine's murder was wrapped up in the mill burning, which also would see Shelley burned to death. Catherine saves Shelley and disappears, leaving Daddy Horn to believe she is dead. Shelley's husband is the hired hand who burned the mill and attempted to murder her, another act of violence that she made him do. But I will get to the details of his abuse in Shelley's episode. Back to the murder. It becomes clear by a game of deduction, played by Coop, that Laura's father is the monster that killed her and her twin cousin Madeline. He devises a trap, rearresting Daddy Horn and allowing Horn to bring Laura's father along as his representation. Leland is a lawyer. Once they reach the station, the sheriff and Coop throw Leland into a cell, where his possession by Bob becomes clear as day. The evil that entered him as a small child takes the heart of this man and bloodies it with the deeds that once brought to Leland's conscious mind made it impossible for him to live. He dies in Coop's arms after ramming himself over and over again against the cell door. It's hardly justice for Laura, Madeline, or the series. I am of the mind that the mystery should never have been solved. But the style of storytelling that Lynch succeeds at does not fit into the accepted mode for successful television, and the network won out, forcing a resolution and therefore forcing an early ending to a truly magical television show. Season 2 carried on for 10 more episodes before being canceled. I think those 10 remaining episodes unravel what was special and wholehearted about the show. As an example of the frayed edges is the love affair that sparks between Audrey Horne and Bobby Briggs. Audrey could no more drop her love of Special Agent Cooper and fall in love with Bobby than Coop could stop listening to the wisdom of his dreams. It cheapens their love and makes a fool and a twice victim out of Shelley. Bobby may have been a boy who disappointed Shelley, but he loved her, and his head would not be turned away from that love. Not in Twin Peaks, not in a world where evil lives in the woods and dreams tell the future. If one thing is sacred and unbreakable about the world, it's love. Without it, that place falls to pieces. Solving the crime tore the roof off of the greenhouse that is the town of Twin Peaks. It is simply salted soil. Next time on Window Dressing's mini Twin Peaks season, Women of the Woods, I talk about Norma Jennings, played by the original California girl, Peggy Lipton. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe wherever you are listening and follow the podcast on Instagram at Window Dressing Podcast for additional content. I'm Madeline Jane Auble. Please stay tuned for the trailer of Whatever Happened to Betty and Joan, a new podcast by my friend and film critic Frank Cavillo.
Hello everyone, my name is Frank Calvillo. I'm an Austin film critic, blogger, and podcaster, and this is Whatever Happened to Betty and Joan, a podcast spotlighting the later careers of Betty Davis and Joan Crawford. Considered by many to be two of the greatest American movie stars prior to working together, their collaboration on the 1962 hit film Whatever Happened to Baby Jane forever linked the two actresses in the minds of movie lovers and cinephiles alike. The rivalry that existed between them has become the stuff of Hollywood lore that seems to have only gotten stronger as the years have gone by and the lifespan of Baby Jane has continued to grow. Whatever Happened to Baby Jane was a game changer within the film world. It It was uncompromising, macabre, deeply human, and utterly compelling. It also proved that you couldn't count legends like Bette Davis and Joan Crawford out. The two stars benefited greatly, both in terms of box office returns, each one shared in portions of the film's profits, and in popularity, as Davis and Crawford found themselves with revived careers thanks to the movie's surprise success. But there was a downside to the professional windfall that Baby Jane provided, especially when it came to Davis and Crawford's reputations within the industry. The movie ushered in the Grande Dame Guignol subgenre of films, titles featuring older actresses considered past their prime by Hollywood standards starring in tales of horror, of which both Betty and Joan unwillingly became the unofficial poster children for. Their attempts to break away from the genre were hard-fought, and are interesting as they show two pioneers, each once considered queen of her respective studio, trying to navigate the changing Hollywood landscape of the 1960s and 70s. In many people's eyes, the legacies of Bette Davis and Joan Crawford were cemented by the iconic film they made together, and for some, the assumption is that they never enjoyed professional success in their post-Baby Jane years. Others still would be hard-pressed to recall any of the varied and worthwhile screen turns each one gave in the years that followed, which included women in positions of power, complicated mothers, and even, in one instance, an international criminal. This podcast aims to pay tribute to the two legends and the cavalcade of performances each one gave in the wake of the movie that dictated and defined the remainder of both their careers. We'll also be looking at how, despite both insisting that they were each different types of screen performers, their careers shared a number of parallels that could not be ignored. A collection of special guests will drop in as we look back on the iconic film and the many places it took its two leading ladies for years afterwards. Available this spring as part of One of Us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other major platforms. Join me as I go back and examine whatever happened to Betty and Joan.